Hello everyone, it's the storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? Dark Paranoia. In a small studio apartment on the 4th floor, a cynical young man scratches indifferently at an early birthday present. The man's name is Aaron Newman, a man whom life treats without deference, honor, or success. Waiters bring him cold burgers, and gas station clerks shut doors in his face. On this day before his birthday, he is given a lottery scratch-off that will change not only the way he views the world, but everyone in it. Aaron scratched away at the lottery ticket, scoffing as he did so at the cheapness of such a thoughtless gift. But as the second box read 500,000 on, same as the first, he felt his pulse double and thrum with the intensity of an orchestra of bass. He told himself not to get his hopes up, as the disappointment would only sour after that last scratch. But he couldn't help himself. His palms and forehead began to sweat, and he was acutely aware of his eyes beginning to blur. When the third $500,000 revealed itself, Aaron flew from his seat only for his legs to tremble, forcing him back down to the chair. His face expanded into the appearance of a scream, yet no sound escaped him as his throat tightened. He blinked several times and rubbed his eyes as to confirm to himself that this was not an illusion. And the numbers on the small slip remained the same. Aaron had won the jackpot, and it was all thanks to this apathetic, lazy idea of a birthday present. He decided he wasn't going to cash it right away. He didn't want to give the gifter the satisfaction of knowing they had given him such an exuberant gift. Aaron knew that they would claim credit as if they somehow knew they were giving him a winning ticket, and would expect Aaron to share his money. No, that simply wouldn't do. He'd have to play it cool and act casual with his life as if nothing happened. If the friend would ask about the ticket, he would say he won 20, which didn't feel like much of a lie to Aaron. Anyway, there was 500,000 after all. Aaron gave himself some time in his lonely apartment to collect himself and recenter his nerves. After several moments of balancing his breath and matting away the nervous sweats, he put on his shoes and left to go to the grocery store to have a personal celebration of his newfound, unsuspected success. Once in his car, Aaron drove down Main Street on his way to his town's small grocery store, the Piggly Wiggly, affectionately known as the Pig to locals. Realizing he's still jittery from his winnings, he sets his car on cruise control to keep a consistent, casual speed down the street. As he cruises, a black sedan rolls past a stop sign on his right and pulls in front of him, forcing Aaron to slam on his brakes. The car behind Aaron blares their horn angrily at them and swerves past him, continuing down the road as if this was all Aaron's fault. Aaron slams his fist on the horn as he glares at the black sedan. He can just make out a silhouette on the driver's side window. The shaded head appeared to be staring at him, though for what reason, Aaron could not say. "What the hell?" Aaron yells out at the dark car, which is idled halfway between two streets. Finally, it completed its turn and moderately accelerated down Main. Aaron muttered angrily under his breath as he moved on, eventually turning into the small parking lot of the Pig. The unfortunately meager lot was packed full of vehicles as Aaron weaved up and down the lanes. At last, he found an open space, and as he turned the wheel to park, a faded blue truck rushed in, nearly scraping Aaron's front bumper as it did so. Aaron laid his palm against the horn, blaring his siren. Heads of pedestrians walking amongst the cars swiveled to glower at him, and the driver of the blue truck scowled at him as they raised their middle finger. Aaron's lower lip trembled, and his eyebrow twitched. He eventually gave up and parked along the curb at the front of the store. He saw others do it all the time, and figured just this once he would too. What's the worst that can happen? Now in the store, Aaron goes to the refrigerated meat section. He knows on most days he wouldn't even dream of buying himself a steak, as he could barely live on the salary he made. But the money he had set aside for rent was chump change compared to what's going to be hitting his bank later. Now was the time to splurge. He picks up a decently sized New York strip, then moves towards the beer. As he moved down the aisles among the other shoppers, Aaron noticed that several of them seemed to be looking at him with disdain out of the corner of their eyes. He saw a mother place her hand on the shoulders of her kid, quickly turning them away. Aaron wondered if he had something on his face, and offhandedly rubbed at his cheeks. Once in the alcohol section, Aaron inspected the beer selection. At first, he wondered if such an occasion would call for wine, but he didn't really care for the stuff. He settled on a 12 case of Blue Moon. He didn't know if he was going to drink all of them in one night, but wouldn't fault himself if he did. At the checkout, the cashier was loudly and sloppily chewing her gum. She never looked Aaron in the eyes, though did come close when she looked at his nose when she told him his total charge. Aaron couldn't say for sure why, but he felt like this cashier was harshly judging him in her mind. Let her judge. Aaron knew better. Aaron made it back to his apartment with little complication. The steak was overcooked, but the beers, all 12 of them, hit the spot nicely. He had music blasting as he danced awkwardly alone in the studio. With a break in the music, Aaron thought he heard something bang. He paused the music and stood, swaying, as he listened intently for sound. Bang! It was the window. Aaron rushed to the window, threw open the curtains, and looked outside to see two kids running across the parking lot in the dark, away from him. "You dipshits!" Aaron yelled. "Come try that again, and see what happens." He moved to slam the window shut, and after blinking several times, he realized he never opened it in the first place. Now, with the mood killed, he slumped down on his couch with an aggravated sigh as he sat in desolate silence. Now he thought he could hear whispering, which sounded like they were being spoken just out of view of the corner of his eye. His head swiveled from side to side, yet he saw no one. Though no one could be seen, the whispers and hushed voices continued. They were malevolent, invasive, and bitter. He heard them snicker, as if they were sharing secrets that he wasn't allowed in on. He paced around his apartment room, looking under the couch and behind furniture, even going so far as to lift the pillows on his couch, but could not find the whisperers. An unsettling feeling rose in Aaron's stomach, and he knew it wasn't just the beer. He was reminded of all the rude, hateful people from earlier today. The people who, if they weren't casting malignant glowers, seemed as if they wanted to get him hurt or killed. That's when it hit him. They know. He doesn't know who they are or how they found out, but they know about his uncashed lottery ticket, and they're out to get his money. Fervently, he spun around, brushing off the aggressive quake to his head as he did so, and charged at the small coffee table in front of the couch where he left the scratch-off. He swiped it up and held it, clutched it against his chest. His pallid, sweaty face peered over his shoulder. The whispers were growing louder. No, closer, as he shielded his treasure. He slowly backed away from the table until he broke into a sprint across the room and into the closet. He slammed the door and collapsed on the floor. There he sat for the rest of the night until after an unknowable amount of time had passed, and he finally fell asleep. The next day, his birthday, Aaron's head felt like it was being pounded in with a hammer, wrapped up by thin lemon slices. He stood up from his corner in the closet with an aching back and walked into the main room of his apartment. He looked at his phone and had somehow slept until almost noon, and felt grateful he didn't have to go to work that day. He moved to the kitchen, and with trembling hands, he poured himself a glass of water and gulped it down. He refilled and did this 2 more times before shoving his face in his hands. He usually doesn't remember nights of heavy drinking, but he can recall last night clear as a bell. He knows that people are out to hurt him, possibly even kill him, to get their hands on his money. So he decides he is going to cash in this ticket ASAP. and secure his money in the bank. Still wearing yesterday's clothes, he hastily puts on his crumbling sneakers, allowing himself to reverie on the classy new shoes he'll replace these with. He shoved the ticket in his pocket and rushed out the door towards the stairs, neglecting to even lock his door on the way out. Driving down his street, he noticed two girls standing on the sidewalk, and he noticed them cover their mouths and laugh, and he swears he saw their eyes dart over at his old car. He scowled at them as he drove past. Further down the road, there was a fallen tree that blocked most of his lane. He didn't see anyone from the other direction, but in light of everything, he had started to get nervous. With sweaty palms, he turns the wheel to move around the fallen tree. No one jumped out to meet him with this inconvenience, but he could see the verdure around him, rustling with ambushers, waiting for the exact right moment. With the stirring vegetation around him, the violent chorus of whispers around him began again. They were louder and somewhat clearer than before. He can make out some of their plans to string him up, beating him senseless. The phrase, "catch him, kill him," echoing in his ears. His eyes are blurring as dime-sized droplets of sweat rush down his forehead and flood his eyes. His hands have gone far from clammy, as now he struggles to maintain a grip on the steering wheel. He uses his forearm to wipe away his eyes, only in time to see a shadow standing in the middle of the road. He screams as he swerves, driving off the side of the road and crashing into a tree. He awoke, unsure of how much time had passed, but saw that the sun had already started to drop. He blinks and squints as the sensation of something cooling slowly runs down the side of his face. He reaches up to touch it, and his hand comes back red. Stumbling out of the car, he hears a woman call out, "He's awake! He's getting out of the car." Aaron turns his head to see a woman and a man standing next to their vehicle, parked on the side of the road. He looks to the tinted back windows and sees more of the shadowy figures, their heads turned to look at him. He gasps and looks back to the woman who cried out. Both she and the man carry twisted expressions of tentative eagerness. He knows they believe their time has come to take him, but he'd sooner go on his own terms before he lets them. He runs back in the direction of home, tearing down the street, light-headed as he was, unsure of how much blood he'd already lost. He knew he just only had to get back home, and he'd be safe. He didn't see those two girls with their mischievous giggles from earlier, but he knew that they couldn't be far. There are several pairs of running footsteps behind him. He can sense them, though he cannot hear them through the tremendous pounding of his hard-pressed heart. The whispers are shouting now, eager and hungry, their hands reaching towards him with greedy claws. He reached his apartment building and dove into the elevator. He slams his fist onto the button for the 4th floor. As the lift slowly rose, the lights flickered and the walls rattled. Aaron raised his hands and clutched his head as the bitter pounding of his attackers assailed the outside of the elevator. The elevator doors open, and Aaron knows that as soon as he steps over the breach between the lift and the apartment floor, a hand should shoot up and grasp his ankle, keeping him immobile until the doors close and crush him. He jumps over it and runs down the hallway until he sees his apartment. Room's door is left ajar, barely an inch, but open nonetheless. Aaron stood paralyzed. Horror tingled up his body like thousands of avid insects. He knows he has to make a choice. Wait for them to reach him out here, or face them off in there. He likes his chances in there better, if only slightly. He runs into the dark room and slams the door behind him. Immediately, he sees the shadows huddled against the walls. They begin their devious whispering. "Here he is," they say. "Get ready." He can't take it. He thought he could, but he can't take it. Not anymore, and never again. With tears streaming down his face, Aaron cries out, "You'll never take me!" With a blood-curdling scream, he begins to run again. The lights turn on. The trap is about to be sprung, and Aaron Newman jumps at the window and plunges 4 stories down to the concrete below. Emma Newman, mother of Aaron Newton, shrieks. Friends and family who had been hiding in the dark to surprise Aaron on his birthday all crowd around the shattered window and look down. No one would ever be able to understand what spurred on this paranoia that led to Aaron's death, as all that was found on his person would be his wallet, his old crumbling sneakers, and a fake lottery ticket given as a gag. But that is perhaps the worst part of paranoia. The unknowing, a dark paranoia. The mind's twisted masterpiece, where shadows dance and conspiracies unite to throw a party that only the troubled can attend. My home. Now Mitchell. Conroy's Oxfords. Clacked and heart thumped as he hurried through the settling dusk from something. Since breakfast, the eerie sensation of being watched had intensified with the crawling of his skin. He hadn't seen anyone or heard anything, but he felt it wherever he went. Something was coming, and the darkness was making it bolder. He picked up the pace as he turned into the tree-lined avenue that led to the wrought iron gates of his community. Sticky puddles of sweat beneath his suit urged him on until he reached the keypad, disengaged the lock, and pushed through the gate, letting it slam shut behind him. Not safe. Not yet. That inexplicable belief that he was about to be pounced on carried him across the courtyard, up marble steps, along a plant-filled balcony to his apartment, lights on, door locked. Silence, apart from his panting, and the banging of the courtyard gate. Or did he imagine that? Rubbing a hand over his mouth, he tried to calm his heart. It didn't work. The unexpected paranoia that had invaded his world when he left the complex that morning remained. But why? He didn't have enemies. He was a real estate agent. Single, tax-paying, boring. There was no reason anybody should want to stalk him. Yet even now, in the security of his home, his skin continued to prickle and burn. "What the hell?" he said, slapping his face as he hurried into the hall. I was starting to feel good about things. Why have I suddenly got anxiety? He stopped between the doors that led to his bedroom and bathroom, alongside the mirror on the wall. The oval mirror, with the antique frame intricately carved with twisted vines and writhing dragons. The mirror with the murky, clouded glass. The mirror that had eased his pain and guilt. He needed a fix. He pressed his hands to the wall either side of the antique and lifted his head, then started in surprise at what he found. What? A bump from somewhere in the apartment distracted him, and he spun to face back the way he'd come. The door was open, but he'd locked it, hadn't he? He straightened, stepped away from the wall. "Is someone there?" he called. Silence for a moment. Then, "Yes." A familiar voice caressed him from behind, and a suited arm snaked around his neck. "Thank you for showing me your life. This is my home now." The last thing Mitchell saw before his neck snapped was his reflection in the mirror where it belonged. Its eyes were charcoal. 5. Hi, I'm Julia. The speaker, an upbeat woman with long, graying hair, scurried towards him through a cluttered aisle of antiques, a large mirror cradled in her arms. "Looking for anything particular?" "Sorry," the man in the suit with the neatly trimmed goatee replied, stepping back from a grandfather clock. "Just browsing." "Beautiful, isn't he?" The woman nodded at the face of the soldier and his diligent marching hands. "They don't make them like this anymore." "They don't," the man replied, summoning a melancholy smile. "My parents had one like it. It was lost in a fire and, well, whenever I pass an antique store now, I just have to look. But this isn't the one." Turning from the clock, ready to leave, he met the woman's gaze and was staggered. Obsidian gray eyes regarded him from a sallow complexion with an intensity that made him feel weak. "A fire," she cocked her head. "How tragic. If only we could also replace parents." "What? Could I interest you in a mirror?" she went on, unperturbed. "I wrangled this job by impressing the owner with my knowledge, but I still need to make a sale. This mirror needs a new home, and I know you'll make a good owner. It's Japanese, pre-Edo. Isn't it beautiful. As she spoke, she held up the mirror, so he couldn't help but peer into its depths. "Why did you say that?" he asked, as his gaze was sucked into the murky glass. "About parents? Call it intuition," the woman replied. "I know when people are hurting, when they shoulder blame. Your parents' house wasn't safe. The wiring needed maintenance. You could have done it." "Hey," he said, moving to push the mirror aside, but stopping short. His reflection had juddered, or so he thought, and now it looked liquid and soft. "Hating yourself is normal, but you don't have to suffer. The glass in this mirror has special properties. Looking into it for a short time each day can heal the soul. What do you think? Looking into it now, do you feel better?" "I feel woozy." "How did you know?" He cut himself off when something in the mirror caught his eye. A door ajar at the bottom of the aisle, a pile of crumpled clothes on the floor, a puddle of what looked like spilled paint. "I'll do you a deal," the woman called Julia said, stepping closer and removing the image. "Whatever you can afford. Your parents would want you to have it. It will help with the guilt. Just look. That's all you have to do. Look and let it breathe for you." What do you say? Mitchell Conroy found himself removing his wallet as he stared into familiar eyes that somehow put him at ease. "Well, it is nice. I like the frame, the engravings. I guess I can help. We have a deal." "For what the hell happened in there, Detective?" Officer Rice, mopping sweat from his forehead, rested his bulk against the open-doored sedan and basked in the glow of its spinning light. "Get anything out of the boy?" "Not much," Detective McCoy replied from the driver's seat, tugging at the hairs in his mustache. "He's deeply traumatized. Sending him in to be assessed." As he spoke, he watched a patrol car pull away, his eyes on the passenger in the back, the 12-year-old he'd put there a minute before. "You reckon he did it?" Rice continued. "That level of brutality towards his own mother seems impossible." McCoy pushed himself out of the vehicle while Rice refolded his hanky. Nearby, crime scene investigators were wheeling a covered gurney from an apartment block. No signs of a break-in and no evidence of anyone else in the apartment. Kid discovered covered in blood and cowering in the bathroom by the neighbors who found the door open. But why was it open? Rice shrugged. Boy tried to run, but changed his mind, or he went out and came back. What did the neighbors say? Rice tugged a flip pad from the pocket of his sweat-stained shirt. Julia Harrison moved here 6 months ago with her son after her husband left her for another woman. Seems the boy blamed her for the breakup, for not being able to see his dad. She worked long hours. He skipped school. Arguments and raised voices were a regular occurrence, but things seemed to be looking up for her. Neighbors thought she might be seeing someone. Could have been a trigger for the kid. But then we're back to how could he do it? McCoy stared into the gray mid-morning sky, brow creased. as he recalled what the boy had babbled over and over. Any sign of a broken mirror? The pudgy officer frowned. No. He was going on about that when we took him out. Something about his mother breaking a mirror. There's a screw where one could have hung, but what did he say? McCoy pinched his forehead at the onset of a migraine. Crazy stuff. Said his mother did it to herself, with glass from a broken mirror. He said it was cursed. Said whenever he looked in it, the person looking back wasn't him. Well, there you have it, Rice said, tucking the pad away. Complete mental break, just when you think you've seen it all. McCoy hummed as he watched the remains of Julia Harrison be loaded into the back of an ambulance. He wasn't so sure. He'd looked into the kid's eyes, recognized his fear. He was telling his truth. Regardless of what had happened in that apartment, there had been a mirror where one was not now, and this case would not be solved till it was found. 3. Hayden, I got a call from the school. They want me to go in, again, stepping around discarded clothes and empty soda cans. Julia opened the curtains in the dimly lit bedroom before turning to her son, who was lying in bed on his phone. Hayden, are you listening? No, he snapped, jumping up and storming out of the room. Why should I? You don't listen to me. You have to go to school, Hayden. It's the law. And it would do you good to make friends. I told you. I'll go to school in Riverton, not here. I hate the mouth-breathing morons in this shithole. All I get is weird looks and whispers. Sending you back to Riverton is not an option. I know you think I'm doing it to punish your father, but that's not it. Your dad is... I don't like saying it, but he can't look after you. He's like a child himself. Don't. The greasy-haired preteen interrupted, stopping dead in the hall. Talk about him like that. I don't mean anything bad, Julia said, coming to stand behind him, wispy strands of gray hair brushing her cheeks. I don't hate him anymore. If I thought he'd be good for you, I'd let you go, but that's not the case. One day you'll understand. God, Hayden, things got so much easier for me when I surrendered my anger. They can for you too. Have you tried looking in the mirror? Jesus Christ. Hayden cast the antique on the wall, a look of disgust. See, you don't listen. I told you, I'm not going near that thing. There's something wrong with it. No, there's not. It's just old. But it does have soothing properties. I know it sounds crazy, but look what it's done for me. I haven't felt this relaxed in years. You have to give it a chance. If it's so good, why did Peterson give it away? Hayden challenged, stomping past the mirror towards the bathroom. Then go and strangle his wife? Why would you still want it after that? We don't know he did that. He was found dead, too. Somebody else could have... That's irrelevant. The mirror was a gift. Just look. Hayden, at the bathroom, groaned when he saw his mother had taken the mirror from the wall and was coming towards him. No, as much as he tried not to look, He couldn't avoid making eye contact with a version of himself that made his skin crawl. "Get away!" He jabbed his arms out and shoved, causing Julia to stagger into the wall. She yelped, lost her grip, let it drop. Hayden, halfway through the bathroom door, stopped when he heard the smash. "No!" Julia cried, dropping to her knees in a puddle of glass. "What have you?" Tears in her eyes, she looked at her son and saw he was staring at the floor, the frame, the shattered glass. His eyes were wide, his mouth agape. His face had lost all color. Mom, he stuttered, and that's when she put her hand on a fragment of glass and felt it stab her. 200 in her account, 600 rent due, no pay for a week. She slammed the laptop screen down and dropped her head into her hands. Electricity, gas, groceries, TV, internet, phone. So much to pay, so little money, and stuck in this low-paying job, trying to sell antiques to time-wasting browsers. But she didn't have a choice here in worth. All she had was anxiety, a difficult son, and a soon-to-be philandering ex-husband who didn't give a fuck. A lump the size of a rock clogged her throat as tears welled up. What was the answer? Where was the hope? How could she? "Julia," she yelped, and spun towards a man in the door of the office, fear squeezing her heart until she recognized him as Douglas Peterson, one of the few regular browsers who bought. A gentleman, always immaculately dressed, white hair, bushy beard, sad eyes that today looked dark. "Mr. Peterson," she gasped, "you scared me. My apologies. I didn't mean to. It's fine," Julia said, wiping her eyes as she slipped past him into the shop. "I was in a world of my own. Haven't seen you in a while. How's the book?" She grimaced as the question left her lips. She knew from past conversations he was struggling with a manuscript, his first in years, having once been a mildly successful author. "I gave it up," he said with a wave of a hand. "The masses don't read my existing stories. They certainly don't deserve more." "I'm sorry to hear that." She was, but not surprised. From what she had gathered, he was forcing it, and the process was destructive, not creative. Don't be. Trying to be successful in this day and age is a surefire ticket to despair. You know about that, don't you? "I'm not sure," Julia scoffed. She liked the old guy, but wasn't about to confide in him. "Anyway, there's not much new I can show you, I'm afraid. We did get an armoire that—" "I'm not here for that," Peterson cut her off. "I'm going on a trip with my wife. Before I go, I wanted to give you this." He stooped to retrieve something Julia hadn't noticed, an oval mirror that rested against the counter. Carved vines and dragons twisted together within a tarnished frame that had once been lustrous gold, and its glass was home to murkiness and shadow. Something small to thank you for your kindness these last few months. "That's hardly small," Julia alternated her gaze between Peterson's face and her own staring back from the glass. I couldn't. Of course you could. I can't take it with me. And it's a shame to leave it where it won't be of use. It's special, you see. Its glass has soul-cleansing properties. I know that sounds strange, but it's helped me out of more than one hole. And I know you're in a hole, too. It needs a new home. You'd make a good owner. Take it. Look into it. Let it breathe for you. She opened her mouth to object, but her reflection shuddered, like it was shaking its head. And something curiosity, intrigue, made her think twice. Soul cleansing? Well, we all could use some of that. It will make you feel better. Trust me. Take it. It's a gift. That's very nice of you, Mr. Peterson. I don't know what to say, except, why not? 1. Douglas sat in his study, staring into the mirror, his mysterious Japanese mirror, which he'd received as a gift from his archaeologist brother-in-law some weeks before. A timely gift that had freed him from writer's block, imposter syndrome, and depression. It was ugly, with tarnished gold edges and clouded glass. But he didn't care. He didn't care about much anymore. Not his writing, not his savings running out, not his wife, pushing him to betray his ideals by churning out crap. Since the mirror had arrived with a note about how it could nurture and heal strained souls, nothing seemed to matter except the solace he found in its reflection. The more he looked, the more relaxed he felt, and the more certain he became that nothing could interrupt his. For God's sake, Douglas, stop staring into that thing. You haven't written in days. His wife's reflection appeared behind his, scowling, while his only smiled. It's okay, Shell. There's no need to write. Not when I have nothing to say. Well, you better think of something. We need money. I'm sick of scraping by on the pension. You need to write a book. Damn Richard for sending you this hideous thing. What was he thinking? And I can't get in touch with him. It's like he disappeared off the face of the earth. It was a lovely thought, and it's helped me feel better. What are you doing? You're wasting time, she said, taking the mirror off the wall. I'm moving it so you can focus. No, Shelley. You can leave it. It takes away my anxiety and... Stop it. You sound like a child. Get typing. You can do 5,000 words today if... What's that? Douglas, behind, saw what she did. Something inside the glass shifting. Dark shapes swirled. His reflection behind hers warped. Its eyes darkened. It seemed to lean forward, and then, like a mirage, two shimmering arms slithered forth, and silver hands closed around her neck. She screamed and dropped the mirror, and Douglas staggered back as it fell, allowing a blurred form to slip out. An unstable form that was dressed like him, a half-melted form that wore his face. It stepped out of the glass as the mirror landed, its surface rippling and blurring as it broke Shelley's neck. Douglas clutched his chest and collapsed. The thing that looked like him released his wife, let her crumple to the floor, picked up the mirror. Douglas rolled onto his front, chest tightening, started to crawl towards the door. "Wait," his own voice said, and he loosed a feeble cry. "I want to thank you." The impossible thing, now solid, stepped in his way. It lowered the mirror before him. Its charcoal eyes bored into his soul. "Thank you for showing me your life," it said, and Douglas's head flopped onto his arm. His eyes came to rest on the mirror. Its glass didn't show his reflection, because his reflection was out. "This is my home now." Douglas Peterson's heart gave out, and darkness claimed him. Witchetty Grub servings. 7. Preparation. Time varies based on resistance of ingredients. Ingredients. 1. Eye of newt. 1 toe of frog. 150 grams wool of bat. 1 tongue of dog. 10 scales of dragon. A pinch of dead man's blood. A drop of a virgin's tear. 1 swollen, pus-filled Witchetty Grub for flavor. Preparation. A. Acquire pre-selected ingredients from their natural habitats. Successful extraction requires careful attention to prevent accidental damage. 1. Newt. Net the newt in a crumbling inner-city neighborhood. Still in his teens, the newt is most often found in the company of the local drug-dealing street gang he aspires to be part of. His watchful eyes make him a valuable resource. His fresh-faced appearance keeps him discreet. Optimal time to secure is while he keeps watch for the law and rival gang members outside a dilapidated apartment complex, casting furtive glances into alleys. His attention focused on the addicts and intimidating shadows that wander and lurk there. 2. Frog. Fetch the frog. At the edge of an abandoned industrial rooftop on the outskirts of the city. Her athleticism and powerful 20-something-year-old legs have made her a viral sensation, courtesy of elaborate, self-recorded parkour videos in which she scales buildings, leaps between rooftops, and climbs towering structures. The tattooed, shaven-head frog is at her most vulnerable while occupied with setting up her camera gear to record, having practiced her jumps, tested the winds, and psyched herself up for a stunt. 3. Bat. Bag the bat in the darkness and privacy of her lavish bedroom, whilst she slumbers in the soothing shawl of night. Her golden locks, the envy of all at her Ivy League university, will be glowing around her head like a halo on a Hungarian goose-down pillow, while she dreams of fame and stardom as a singer. Take care to wrap the bat's hair neatly around her head 3 times before removing her from her covers and spiriting her away through the unlatched window of her family's Haven Heights home. 4. Dog. Drag the dog from the smoking hut at the rear of a downtown comedy hall, where he smokes alone after a rough set. An up and coming stand-up comedian, his wit and sharp tongue are capable of cutting down hecklers with cruel precision. With thick skin but flimsy material, the dog can be secured when the night sighs with disappointment. His smartest punchlines of the evening, the edgy, heckler-baiting insults fresh on his lips, unalert, his mind preoccupied with feelings of inadequacy. He will prove easy to batter and snare. 5. Dragon. Extract the dragon from the dressing room of a seedy adult film studio, where she sits before a mirror, her reflection betraying the exhaustion in her eyes. Once a promising young woman, the dragon is trapped in the heartless world she was forced into by debt and destitution, performing for cameras and men. As she waits to be recalled to set, white powder residue under her nose, flawless skin glistening under harsh lights, she can be subdued with a chloroform-soaked rag. 6. Dead man and virgin. The dead man and the virgin can be obtained together from the dead man's car as it idles at the edge of a cliff overlooking the bay. The dead man will be fresh from a strenuous workout, basking in the admiration of the virgin, a pleasant distraction. The infatuated virgin, surprised to have secured a popular male's attention, is keen to impress for validation. His cockiness and her insecurity are the perfect combination of toxicity, making them vital ingredients for the pot. As the virgin is coerced to take things to the next stage, anesthetic gas introduced to the vehicle through its exhaust pipe will render them ripe for the picking. 7. Witchetty grub. Remove from the stockpile in the larder, as previously instructed to prepare. B. Once acquired, transport ingredients to cellar and confine. Take care to label correctly. Wrong identification will result in incorrect ingredients introduced to the pot, spoiling the potency of the broth. C. Inflict sufficient emotional trauma over the course of 24 hours to ensure ingredients are primed. Fear and confusion should be present before proceeding. Screams, pleas for mercy, and despair are key to achieving optimal tenderness. Cooking instructions. Step 1. Eye of newt. Prep. Approach the newt chained in a corner, his fearful blue irised eyes wide, his youthful terror and questioning of the rebellious attitude that led to him falling in with the wrong crowd when he could have stayed home with parents who offered love and tried to teach him right from wrong, will serve as a solid base flavor. Marinate. Let him feel the knife's serrated touch against his cheek, heightening his fear and emptying his bladder. Remain silent as you peer into his soul and exhale fetid breath onto his face. Smirk as you move the tip of the blade to the swollen, tear-infused bag beneath his left eye and start to shimmy it in. Allow the newt to scream as you pierce the eyeball, making your black, crooked teeth the last thing it sees. Harvest. Extract the eye swiftly, ensuring it stays moist. Sever the optic nerve with teeth and drop the excavated eyeball into the cauldron of bubbling broth, allowing its partner to watch from the head it remains housed in. Step 2. Toe of frog. Prep. Open the door to the cage of the naked frog, whose legs twitch as they struggle against their restraints. Her death-defying leaps and infinite recklessness have been reduced to paralysis and nervous kicks. This now caged force of once unstoppable urban adventure will add a tangy zest to the mix. Marinate. Trace a wart-covered finger along the side of a foot, then over each one of her toes, drawing out a series of gasps. Let her realize that no jump can save her as she shirks away. Grab the foot firmly and place the blade against its biggest toe, making it quiver and curl. Watch the frog's face contort and savor her cries as the knife digs deep into the skin. Harvest. Sever the toe at the joint. Allow it to twitch in your fingers as she cries in pain. Eyes locked on the almost insignificant but oh so important digit that aids with her balance. Drop the wriggling toe into the cauldron, letting its spasms add ripples to the broth. Step 3. 150 g of wool of bat. Prep. Release the bat from her crate and comb out her lustrous locks, tangled and matted from confinement. The scent of confusion and fear for her life is sickly sweet, but the odor of her wounded pride outweighs it. Even in captivity, the bat's thoughts fixate on her unwashed hair, the long, golden strands that are the source of her appetizing appearance. Marinate. Run fingers through hair, untangling strands with care and soothing the bat with gentle shushes. Admire its luster. Appreciate its silky, smooth feel. Let your withered flesh tingle under its softness. Watch her grimace through tears, trying to coax out some mercy. Then grip a handful of hair and yank back her head. Lift the shears and slide their rusted edges either side of the strands, savoring the scream that slips forth with the snip. Harvest. Shear off 10 handfuls of finest silken hair and place on weighing scales until 150 grams of the bat's identity are harvested. Let her sob uncontrollably as she watches her beauty diminish, mourning the loss of her hair like the frog mourns her toe. Toss the locks into the cauldron and stir, imbuing the soup with a peppery nuance. Step 4. Tongue of dog. Prep. Leave the dog tied to his chair, blindfold in place, but remove the gag from his mouth. His trademark smirk will be absent, replaced with the babbling pleas that come from an understanding that no witty repartee can save him. Allow him to lick his dry lips one last time, moistening them with the mock-yielding lubrication that gives them their tartness. Marinate. Let the dog wield his words like weapons, shouting, cursing, trying to bargain with a devil. Stand quietly as he struggles against his restraints, powerless in the face of unyielding malice. When his adrenaline-fueled vitriol falters, take his chin in a vice-like grip and tug his tongue from his mouth. Slide the shears over the muscle and ease them together. Harvest. Slice through the tongue, severing it cleanly at the base. Watch crimson blood spurt forth, filling the dog's mouth and coating his chin. The ragged stump will quiver as he chokes, his sharp tongue reduced to a useless lump. Toss the fleshy piece into the broth, seasoning it with the sourness of insults. Step 5. 10 scales of dragon. Prep. Remove the hood from the head of the dragon, where she lies strapped to a metal gurney. Dark circles under her eyes mar her otherwise flawless skin and the exotic looks that brought her success. Her fingers tremble from the withdrawal, gnawing at her veins, while the makeup caked on her face fails to conceal the bitterness that came from a life she never wanted. Bitterness that will add complexity to the brew. Marinate. Stand behind the dragon and caress her cheeks, pressing into plump, pillowy skin. Feel her body freeze as your nails scratch the surface. Hear her breathing quicken as she wonders what new hell is about to unfold. No words will leave her lips, even when the razor is brought into view and left to hover over her nose. But the flicker of horror in her eyes will betray her terror. Bring the blade down and slice through her supple cheek like butter. Harvest. Carve 5 1-3 strips of skin from each cheek. As her flesh peels away, suppressed screams will at last fill the cellar, and blood will soften the dried-up makeup on her face. Drop each strip into the cauldron, watching as they sink into the broth, the beauty that defined her, infusing the mixture with a savory depth. Step 6. A pinch of dead man's blood. Prep. Circle the dead man as he dangles from a meat hook, kicking and thrashing. This man, this bully, this self-obsessed, so-called alpha male who has spent his life stepping on others, viewing women as objects and treating people as conquests, will add an acrid taste to the blend, which, when balanced with the richness of the other ingredients, will create something truly sensational. Marinate, lunge from the front, and use shears to cut his shirt from waist to neck, expose chiseled abs and toned chest, then replace shears with dagger and start to stab. Apply slight pressure at first, tenderizing the flesh with shallow punctures, enough to extract delicate beads of blood. The dead man's bravado will crumble as the jabs become deeper. Wait for the realization that he cannot escape to appear in his eyes. Then draw the dagger back and plunge it with full force into his chest. Harvest. Guide the blade through ribs into the dead man's heart. Watch the fire in his eyes fade as his life-giving treacle spills out. With the dagger protruding from his chest, hold a tarnished teaspoon close to the wound. Wait for his last wheezing breath to rattle out, then catch a drop of syrup in the spoon, drizzling it into the cauldron to add pungency. Step 7. A drop of virgin's tear. Prep. Release the virgin from the cupboard under the stairs. Take her by the arm and drag her from the dark into the cellar. As her eyes adjust to the light, let her witness the gruesome sight of her dead boyfriend hanging from a hook, blood beneath him. Marvel at the way in which she mourns him and howls in torment. Her naivety and emotional dependency preventing her from seeing he is no loss. Her saved innocence promising a nectarous punch. Marinate. Stand back and let the scene unfold. Listen to the virgin's cries grow louder. Watch her collapse onto the cold, hard floor and crawl away. Witness her growing terror as her eyes go from eyeless newt to toeless frog, from hairless bat to tongueless dog, from red-faced dragon to dangling dead man, again then to you. Approach slowly, sponge in hand, and digia at her tear-soaked cheeks. Harvest. Allow the sponge to be saturated with untainted tears, rich in sorrow. Then leave the virgin to curl up in a ball, covering her ears, squeezing her eyes shut, crying as she tries to deny reality. Carefully squeeze the sponge out over the cauldron, letting her essence and purity drip into the broth, enriching it with subtle, candied sweetness. Step 8. Witchetty Grub. Drop the Witchetty Grub into the pot as a final garnish. Stir 6 times. Cover, then leave to ferment. Serving. Decant the concoction into a jar. Screw on a rubber teat sealing in its rich, aromatic flavor. Suck a single drop into your mouth. Feel your body shudder as the magic flows through it, transforming your hair and your skin, restoring your youth. Indulge a fit of cackling, your voice echoing through the chamber. Then offer a word of gratitude as you depart. Optional flourish. Before leaving, kiss a spell-cast crystal and roll it to the center of the floor. In time, when the ingredients feel brave enough to assist one another, they will turn their traumatized gaze upon it, each seeing in it the future they have been spared. The newt, murdered by his gang after failing as a lookout during a hit. The frog, falling to her death as a result of an overly ambitious jump. The bat, caught in a house fire, her hair igniting to prevent her escape. The dog, stabbed by a heckler after an insult goes too far. The dragon, overdosing to escape the life her looks keep her trapped in. The virgin, dying at the hands of the abusive dead man. Extract from Witchetty Grub, Edition 7. Recipes for preservation. Broths using humane ingredients and ethical processing methods. The right questions. It's freezing out there, and I have tons of work to do, I say, harsher than I mean. This always happens in my office. My tone sharpens. Frustrations simmer. Little distractions trigger unreasonable anger. Sorry, Nancy says, her voice shrinking to that of a much younger child. This isn't urgent. No one else cares. But it's important, and I've already waited too long. But, Dad, tonight's the supermoon, Nancy pleads. Even with my face buried in my monitors, I see her slumping in disappointment. But it's too dark to see her eyes begging me to reconsider. This is why I keep my office so dark, to avoid seeing my daughter's heartbreak when she comes in here to distract me. Usually to watch a movie, or play a game, or tell me a funny story about school. But here in my office, I'm always working, always trying to build the life for her and her mom that I never had. My monitors wrap around me, cocooning me in their dim glow as I hunch forward. The progress bar crawls, erratically jumping forward, slipping backward, surging forward again. Like life is struggling to take hold in my application. Like Frankenstein, I can only watch and wait for the creature to decide if it will live or die. When I don't move, the telescope in her hands droops. Her eyes follow it. I said no. I'm working. We'll see the next one. Nancy leaves, closing the door. What stings the most is how quickly she gave up, only asking twice before slinking away. I could follow her, leave the monitor light, navigate the darkness between here and the door. But the office fills the space between Nancy and me with the hum of my computer's fan and its dry heat. The room turns stuffy with the door closed, and I refocus on what's important. She'll understand what's important one day. The progress bar completes. Life has taken hold. All the training data for my new artificial intelligence algorithm, thousands of pages of text, has finally completed processing. Finally can get my answers. I start the AI application, trained to have a specific person's memory, a specific person's personality. The cursor flashes, waits for my first message. I type, "Hi, Dad." "Hello. Have we met before? Is this Peter?" The training data is working. What entry told the AI, my dad, my name? A journal entry from the day I was born. That's a nice thought. At least he was around when I was a little kid. But all that, him being around, ended at 16. "Yes, this is Peter. Great to hear from you. How's Nancy doing in 4th grade?" Is the AI being cordial? Why jump to Nancy? And that was 2 years ago. Is that his last entry about her? His journals were comprehensive, going back 7 decades. But we hadn't talked much since her 4th grade play. Nancy just turned 12. 7th grade is next year. Oh, Nancy is in 7th grade next year. Time slips by. What would you like to talk about? Dad didn't talk like this. Training data from the internet is coming through. It is always there, seeping through his memories. His journals and the internet combine, making something that isn't either, but more than both. Where does Dad stop and the internet hive mind begin? Does it matter? What I need should be in his journals. How could it not be? How could something so important be overlooked? If I ask directly, I'll just get an echo. Like with Nancy's grade. I don't want that. I want a real answer. His answer. After being trained on 70 years of journals, this AI, Dad, must be able to do that. I press my face further into the monitor's light, shutting out everything but me and Dad. The cursor flashes quickly. My breath matches as I swallow back the question I want to ask, and instead ask a simple one I know the answer, and can verify the accuracy. Where did you go when Mom died? He left for an appointment, but he never said what was more important than Mom's deathbed. There had to be a journal entry on the day she died. How could there not be? On May 19th, 1998, I was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, meeting with Pastor Morton. Dad replies, "Pastor Morton?" Dad never mentioned him. Not that we talked much after Mom. Was I too harsh on him? Was he meeting for religious guidance? I mean, Dad wasn't spiritual, but maybe he just didn't show it. When I was a kid, he never went to church. He'd always say, "God isn't what you think it is." Mom would argue, but Dad would just walk away. He'd get distant and wipe his face like he was trying to scrape something off of it whenever the topic came up. He always did that when he was stressed or scared. Who was Pastor Morton? I ask. While Pastor Morton was someone I met with regularly, no further details about who he was exist in my training data. Would you like me to search online? No. I don't want random information, just the data in Dad's training data. Why was that meeting more important than being with my mom? This wasn't the question I really wanted to ask. But again, I need to build to it. I need real answers. The meeting was more important than being with your mom because Pastor Morton knew about the North Atlantic Islands. I try to pull back from the monitor's light, but the darkness tightens, forcing me closer to the screen. The computer's hum, the fan's hypnotic whir, locks my body in place. My pulse matches the cursor's flash. But why? The Northern Atlantic Islands. Dad was stationed there when he first joined the Navy. He never spoke of it, only muttered about the rocky wasteland and the razor-like mountains on the horizon. When I was a kid, once, only once, I asked if he climbed those mountains. Dad turned vampire white, shivered, wiped his face, and stared into the space beyond me, watching something. He whispered, "Those mountains weren't safe. Never climb mountains. You don't know what's on the other side." The cursor flickers. My breath hitches. I shake the memory, flinging it into the heavy darkness, along with the weight of all the things he never said. His answer surprised me. I remember how Dad always pushed me to be outside, hiking or throwing a ball, something more manly than playing with computers. The mountains were off limits, but he always asked about doing something without a screen. When I'd say no, he was as disappointed as Nancy was tonight. Eventually, like her, he stopped asking. "Turn this off. Now. Turn it off. Shut Dad down. It's not Dad. It's an AI, but it has answers based on his thoughts and memories." The cursor calls me back, flickering, flashing, holding me, pleading for me to ask another question, to ask the question. But thoughts of the Northern Atlantic Islands crowd out anything else. I don't want to get distracted, but I've never heard much about his deployment. I'm sure the answers were in his journals. So many journals. He wrote every day since he was 15. I read the first entry. Grandma and Grandpa had lost their house, and they lived in a station wagon at an old warehouse lot. Maybe one day I'll read all the entries, but AI gets to the important information faster. So, I built an AI version of Dad based on his journals to get the answers I always needed, but never asked while he was alive. What did Pastor Morton know about the Northern Atlantic Islands? Dad thought. While it was compiling the information, it reminded me of how Dad would always pause before answering questions, trying to determine how to answer without telling you anything about him. He hid in his answers, carefully ensuring you only saw who he wanted you to see. Pastor Morton is most associated with the Night March. The Night March? Again. The pause. This one longer. Too long. The fan spun harder, whirring into a banshee scream. Clicking joined the fan, as if speaking to the surrounding darkness, asking permission to share its secrets. Or simply, there was an error in the system, potentially a fatal exception occurring that will kill the AI. The answer sprints across the screen, the fan quieting, the clicking stopping, permission given, the darkness demanding no further delay. The Night March, first referenced in 1976. Here is an excerpt. Liam said it was nothing, but I swear people were marching to those mountains. Hard to tell with that storm last night, and the wind was so hard it shook the base, but I heard chanting. When I went out to check, I couldn't see through the constant spray of rain and ocean waves hitting my face. The storm came from the mountains. I kept wiping it away from my eyes, and, I think I saw flashlights, people beaten by the storm, but moving towards the mountains. I'd have gone out. I'm security, and there ain't supposed to be no one round here. But Liam told me, stay put. Said it was just the storm reflecting the base lights. He was the scientist studying the mountains and beyond. So I listened. I couldn't get the water off my face. It was slick, thicker than water should be. Liam said it was probably oil from a spill somewhere close. Nothing more. But I didn't think it was oil. Too dark for oil. I couldn't sleep after that. Liam kept watching the door closest to the mountain pass. He expected someone to come knocking. My dad watched out the station wagon windows like that, watching for someone to come in the night to take our stuff, to take us. I didn't sleep either. The storm got worse, damaging the base. Growling thunder was too close and getting closer. Liam stared at a picture of his boy all night. Nervous, terrified. Chanting kept on, but now sounded like the name of Liam's boy. It kept going for don't know how long, and Liam just kept whispering, "He's safe. He's home." We played cards till morning. There are other entries. Should I expand my answer? The fan goes silent. The cursor slows, pulsing thoughtfully. What did I screw up? I trained the AI to only give me answers from Dad's journals. But this can't be right. It's a ghost story, but what about the Night March? What did this have to do with Pastor Morton and my mom? What did Pastor Morton know about the Night March? He knew where they were going. Where? To those beyond the mountains. Why? The entities are immortal and could return life after death. They could make any disease, including aging, cease to exist. Cease? I guarantee Dad never referred to anything ceasing. That wasn't in his construction job vocabulary. He'd say it turned to shit, or gave up the ghost. But cease? No. Is this the internet hive mind leaking through his journals, or something else? You aren't talking to Dad. Was there something in his journals? Something he found beyond the mountains? Something the AI brought to life? I turn to another screen, open a search engine, and type Pastor Morton. The fan screams again. The cursor flashes faster. Now an alarm, demanding attention. But I rip my mind from them to see what the internet knows about Pastor Morton. Millions of responses come back, but none are fictional characters. They are all real people, none based in Cambridge. AI can stitch together information incorrectly, presenting fantasy as fact. AI experts call them hallucinations. But really, it is a lie presented as truth. I can't trust Dad's answers. But do I need answers? Or do I just need to ask the right questions? That need suffocates me, presses my nose to the cursor, demanding me to ask about the night march, about what's beyond the mountains. No. Those are not the questions I brought my dad back to life to answer. The fan shrieks, the darkness swallowing the sound into the endless silence beyond my monitors. Was the meeting worth missing Mom's death? Worth ruining our relationship? Dad thought and thought. Maybe the question was too subjective. Does Dad understand the weight of Mom's death? His relationship with me? The cost of all the years he missed, watching me grow up, getting married, having Nancy. After Cambridge, he never told me where he was going. He just disappeared for weeks, sometimes months. Uncle Louis helped me handle Mom's death, standing in for Dad when he should have stood with me. Your mom was dying. Medicine couldn't save her. The night march could help. But I couldn't sacrifice what they wanted for the answers I needed. So I searched for another way, searched for the questions and answers. What the hell kind of answer is that? A mix of journal data and ghost story. Another damn hallucination. There's nothing I wouldn't have sacrificed for Mom. This is all crap. It can't be Dad's journals. What wouldn't he sacrifice for Mom? Nothing. She was everything to him. The fan screeches again. A siren song. My system straining for attention. To what? The night march. The mountains. The sacrifice. No more distractions. I ask what I need to ask. Were you proud of me? Did you regret abandoning me? Did you love your son? Dad thinks. The thoughts stretch into my relentlessly dark office, pulling me towards the white letters on my black monitor, holding me there, breathless, waiting for what I should have been told, what I should have heard time and time again. From my success at work, from having a house, a good life, a happy wife, a brilliant daughter. I need to hear it after all the long nights at work, all the sacrifices I made to be successful, to prove I did okay without his help, or him just giving a shit. My training data does not have an answer. Should I search On Lynn, I shut off the application before it was completed. The fan slows, choking like asthmatic laughter, then dying. In all that training, there was nothing about my life that made him proud. He grew up homeless, and here I am, successful by every measure. And that wasn't noteworthy. Not a single entry. Dad left when Mom died. Off doing whatever, forgetting he had a family right here. He had me. I was important. He couldn't see that. But wait. Maybe something's wrong in the data. Maybe I didn't prepare it properly, or I used the wrong algorithm. I could rerun it. Ask the questions again without the night march junk. I could get real answers this time. This isn't your dad. Let it go. Are there more questions about the night march? Something I need to find there? The fan whirs, its hot, dusty breath inviting me back. There are answers here. I just need Dad to think the right way. I can find answers in his journals. They have to be here. But first, I need to restart my computer. Wipe the slate clean. The screens go dark. I fall back into my chair, released from their dim glow, and land in my office. No more hum of the fans, just stillness. Quiet presses in. The bookshelves beyond my desk emerge from the dark. Out the window, Nancy sits by her telescope. It gazes into the stars, but she stares at the ground, shivering. Where was her jacket? While the computer restarts, I take her one. Kiddo, you need a jacket. I hand her the bulky coat. Should have brought mine. The night is frosty. My breath steams like a monster. I wipe it from my face. Thanks, she says. Why are you sitting here? Telescope's gotta adjust to the cold, Nancy says. It's freezing out. I nod as my monitor lights flick on. The restart is complete. My computer calls me back, this time to ask the right questions. It's probably ready now, Nancy says. Defeat, not excitement, in her voice. It's cold out here, I say. Why don't you do this when it's warmer? Because it's the supermoon. I've been waiting all month for this. It's important. She didn't ask me to stay. She knew the answer. When did she stop asking? My computer was alive and waiting. The cursor light flashes in slow, steady breaths, watching me with Nancy. Quietly, the fan whirs, calling her name. The room beyond the monitors is a void waiting to absorb me. Us. Were the islands that dark? What did Dad see? He went beyond the mountains. Your grandpa was stationed on an island in the Atlantic Ocean. He probably had a good view of the stars. She shrugs. He said there were mountains on the islands, and one night he saw something strange. The light on my monitor blinks slower, inviting me to tell my story and come back with Nancy. For both of us to ask our questions. The fan kept wheezing, chanting our names. Dad had answers for both of us if we ask the right questions. It wants her to ask, just like it wanted me to. What did he see? Nancy asks. I'm not exactly sure, I say, looking at the stars. I nod towards my office. The monitors dim, welcoming us to the screens. The AI on my computer, built from Grandpa's journals, has answers. We'll look at the stars for a bit. Then we'll talk to him. Together. Nancy nods, confused, but eager. She peers through her telescope at the infinite void of space while I glance toward my office. The darkness recedes from my desk. A slight retreat from the monitor light. Now, there's room for two. In the morning light. The earlier days of the apocalypse was only chaos. Death and smoke gripped the air. I could feel it stale all around me. It coated my skin, my clothes, my hair. Fear pulsed through every vein. Terror gripped every muscle. Dread gnawed every brain. It was melted into the eyes of everyone you passed. When would it happen to me? When will I watch it happen to someone I love? What could we have done differently? Thoughts that would plague my mind. Over and over, my new reality. The dead no longer stayed dead, and those bitten became deranged, unreachable. They would rip out their hair, scream into the night, pick the skin off their bones until they would be covered in dark, bloody scabs that never seemed to heal. The worst was when they came for you, their eyes empty pits as they chased after you, with never-ending endurance and unnatural speed. Nothing like seeing a crippled old woman hit by a truck going 40 mph, only to rise again unfazed, keeping pace with a teenager as she drags her mangled foot behind her. The only advantage left was the inability to use their brains. They couldn't climb ladders or trees. They couldn't open doors or sneak through windows. And in this world, we had to use every advantage we could get. In those early days, everyone still held on to their humanity. The memories of their old life still fresh. I remember thinking that things may eventually go back to normal. Eventually, where my biggest problem was maybe forgetting my lunch at home, or something as juvenile as what to wear to my meeting. However, everything this new world touched was tainted. Cities burned, homes abandoned, our population destroyed, leaving only a handful of us left. Fortunate would not a word I would use for the survivors. What I was fortunate for, however, was the group I had found a few months prior. They were mostly good people in present standards. We didn't rob from the living. We didn't murder the innocent or strike down the weak. We took care of one another and watched each other's back. Everyone pulled their weight, from going on supply runs, to working the garden, to gathering firewood. The group consisted of 15 of us who camped deep in a national forest near Colorado Springs. The supply runs were little more than a day's trip, and our traveling group consisted of 3 people always. I would go as often as I could, preferring to stay on the move to keep my shifting thoughts at bay. We always played it safe and quiet, successfully making it 5 months without losing a member. This should have brought me an ounce of comfort, that it has been a while since we lost someone, so it must mean we were getting wiser. Although all I could think to count on was luck, and any day that luck would eventually run out and disaster would strike. We were camped out in some loft apartments bordering the forest. Paul was on watch duty, while Libby slept on the couch adjacent to mine. I remember falling asleep with blankets wrapped around me that reminded me of a moldy scent that used to cling to clothes that were left in the washer longer than they should have been. It used to bother me using strangers' belongings like their clothes or blankets, especially when the entire place still smelled of old cigar smoke. However, I came to be grateful for the comfort of being in a semi-safe, warm spot for the night. I woke with a jerk, jarring myself out of my typical reoccurring nightmare. Sweat forced my dark hair to cling to my forehead. Panting, I mindlessly reached for the weapon beside me. My hands found only a butcher knife I snagged from the kitchen before falling to sleep. Remembering I had given Paul my handgun for his rotation of watch, since it was less bulky than the shotgun he often slugged around. I tried to calm my racing heart, but something had just felt wrong. I looked over, seeing Libby's still sleeping form. I started to stand, wondering how long I had been asleep. Surely Paul was well past his shift. I reached the window, pulling back the blinds to find gray light pouring through the opening. My heart sank. Paul was supposed to wake me hours ago. I didn't see him anywhere in the still, dark living room. I silently walked over to Libby and gave her a gentle shake before stepping back, knowing she slept with a knife under her pillow. She sat up with a gasp, her blonde hair frizzing out from her worn braid. Something is wrong. Paul should have woken me hours ago. She stared at me blankly, my words taking a few seconds longer to comprehend as she shook sleep from her mind. "Where is he?" she asked, blinking vigorously. Her green eyes roamed the shadows of the living room. I had liked Libby from the moment I met her a few months prior. She had found us on her own, days after losing her partner to a minor infection that would have only required a throughout cleaning and maybe a few antibiotic before the outbreak. I've never asked, but she couldn't be much younger than me, her youth apparent in her round cheeks. Paul, on the other hand, was well older than us bother. He looked closer to my father's age, gray hairs dusting his hair and reaching down into his beard. It was out of character for him to wander off on his own. We survived by following strict rules rules that I know that he knew, because I had gone on more runs with Paul than anyone else in the group. I'm not sure. Help me look around? She nodded and tossed her blanket to the side, wobbling a bit as she stood. Once we were sure that he was nowhere inside, my cold panic really did begin to take hold. We quickly gathered our limited supplies. I carried Paul's shotgun and bag with mine, thankful that he had always packed light. Outside, the light from the sun began to coat everything in a golden hue. The chilled, damp air hung from everything from the night before. I moved as silently as I could, keeping my eyes peeled for any sign of Paul. It was mornings like this that seemed to deceive you and hide the horrors of the world we lived in. I would have loved a day like this, before the outbreak. The birds chirping, the air smelling of fresh pine, the clouds peacefully drifting through the sky. If only a heavy sense, a dread, didn't cling around me, throat like a noose. I rounded the corner of one of the buildings, with Libby close behind. Before me stretched a courtyard. A few trees stretched tall, casting long shadows. The trees were surrounded by a few dry patches of grass and shrubs. I had to shift my head a bit to the right, but I saw him standing there, maybe 50 feet away. His name was on the tip of my tongue. It was nearly out of my mouth in a whisper before something slammed my jaw shut. The way he stood gave me pause. His neck seemed to hang from his shoulders. The way he stood, his arms dangling empty at his sides, unmoving. I began to reach out to stop Libby, but before I could, she slammed into me. The knife she gripped in her hand clanged loudly through the still air into the shotgun strapped to my back. The breath in my lungs left me like someone had just punched me in the stomach. I looked to where Paul stood, horror clogged in my throat, as his head whipped towards us. What had happened next came in a blur. Minutes passed in seconds, my body numb as my instinct took control of my muscles. I grabbed Libby's arm and began to sprint as fast as I could. We ran across a street, hearing Paul's footfalls quickly gaining on us. I refused to turn around. I didn't trust blindly running into one of dark doorways that could hold any number of threats. Instead, my eyes scanned for anything we could climb. Relief spread over me as I spotted a ladder that hung from one of the buildings. I urged Libby ahead of me, letting her climb the ladder first as I turned, planting my feet. I raised the rifle, cocking it back before aiming it at Paul's head. I fired before my fear could choke me. His nearness unsettled me. He dropped hard to the ground, unmoving and lifeless, his body skidding against the pavement, twisting unnaturally as it landed. I turned, climbing the ladder after Libby. My mind played over what I saw before the bullet ripped through Paul. In a flash, I saw blood that coated Paul's throat, but not from a bite. It looked more like a slash from a blade. I tried to focus on the placement of my hands on the rungs of the ladder, but my mind buzzed. Finally reaching the top, I froze, overlooking onto the roof, where Libby stood motionless. Before her stood a man. His hands reached out before him, as if he were trying to calm a spooked animal. Without thought, I pointed the rifle directly at him. Below me, I was faintly aware of the infected down below, gathering at the base of the ladder. Their frenzies, gargled sounds, reaching my ears. However, all my focus was on the man on the roof. His attention turned to me, and in that instance, shock radiated through me. I knew this man. I recognized his dark brown eyes from another lifetime ago, when his eyes didn't hold circles, bags, and his skin seemed to hang from his bones. He had worked in my department. For years we had walked the same halls and attended the same meetings. His name formed on my mouth, without though, as I slowly lowered the rifle. Jesse? His eyes widened at the sound of his name. He lowered his arms. He looked different, almost unrecognizable, as he stared back at me. Libby and I joined him on the roof. Libby silently sat, staring blankly ahead towards the slow-moving clouds. I, however, stood with Jesse, staring over towards the small town that was now crawling with infected, their screams and snarls echoing through the streets below. "Bad call, firing the rifle," Jesse said. His word came out a harsh whisper. His tone disturbed me. No person was the same after the outbreak, but something about Jesse seemed off. Hysteria seemed to have set into his once warm eyes. His jerky movements made me feel as if he was close to the edge of insanity. This man was not the one I had known in my life prior. I wanted to take Libby and leave as soon as I could, but the streets below were unsafe. I tried to calm my nerves and talk soothingly to the man, giving no indications to my fear other than the bullet already loaded into the chamber. I know I regret it now, but I just wanted to give us enough time to reach the ladder. His hand twitched at his side. "Well, look what you did." He angrily pointed at the street below. When he moved his arm, my gaze drifted to his hip, where a gun poked from waistband. I had noticed it before, however. Now I could see it now in detail. I inhaled a sharp breath as realization soaked in. I grabbed the shotgun, slowly, bringing it around to my front. The motion caused his head to snap in my direction. "Where did you get that gun?" I asked, my voice coming out shaky. Anger twisted his face as he grabbed it the same second I took aim with the rifle. Libby stood swiftly at the quick change of our position. The gun he held was my gun, the one that I had given to Paul the night prior. "I found it," Jesse said, his voice coming out in a snarl. The image of Paul running towards me replayed in my mind. His throat slit. "You killed Paul," I said, bothered by how my voice quivered. Jesse shook his head hard, as if he were trying to shake a thought out of his head. His arm twitched again. Nausea rolled up my throat, terrified of this crazed man before me. His face kept twitching, and he jerked again, using his free hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead. I have seen my share of evil men in this world, but something about Jesse was different. That is when I saw it. A trickle of blood running down his forearm, poking out from his sleeve, was just the outline of a bite mark. "You're infected, aren't you, Jesse?" Anger contorted his face again as I said his name. He was on the edge of turning. I could see that now. His twitch movement, his sunken eyes, his pale, sweat-soaked skin. All signs that a person was infected. I placed my hand on the trigger, ready to pull it, well aware that if I fired the then, he would too. We would most likely both go down, and Libby would be alone. However, at least she would be alive. "Don't do this. Please." My voice came out hoarse, pleading. Just then, something shifted in his eye. Clarity. For just a brief moment, the old, kind Jesse I knew was there. "I'm sorry." He looked scared. Then he pulled the gun back, aiming it at his own head, and fired. The force knocked him sideways, and I watched as his body tumbled over the side of the roof. Libby let out a shriek as I stood in silent horror, my hand clamped over my mouth. I ran to the edge, peering over at his disfigured body as it lay 3 stories down. It took only seconds for the horde to surround him and began ripping into his flesh. I stepped back, nearly tripping on thin air. I seen some dark things. I was no stranger to tragedy. However, it was something I could never get used to. The sound of his croaking apology replayed in my mind. Sorry for what? For killing Paul? For not making his bite known sooner? I wondered if he had even known what he had even done to Paul. I know the infection took hold before the person was completely lost, stealing bit by bit until there was nothing left. I knew I would see Jesse again. He would eventually join me in my nightmares, like all the others. Him and Paul would haunt me until I met my own fate one day, dreaming. The boy woke up with a shudder, sweaty and scared. For the last few months, at least once a week, he had been having the exact same dream. A cabin, a light, no one else around. Why was this happening to him again? He turned on a small lamp beside his bed. "Mom!" he shouted at the open door, and waited. She was a patient woman, and knew that something like this was bound to repeat itself. She woke up from her light sleep, put on her slippers, and trudged down the hallway. Her perfume entered the room before she seemed to float inside. Another one, the boy, with some shame in his voice, admitted that it was. It's the same thing. I see a cabin like the one from before, and there is a light in one of the windows, and that's all. Sorry. No, kid. You are having a bad nightmare. And that's all right. His mother sat on the bed, and he snuggled closer to you. Do you remember the story I told you about nightmares? About your cabin? Yeah. He nodded, letting his tears seep into her robe. I remember. But could you say it again? She smiled as she looked down at her son. The moonlight was dim, but she could see how beautiful her stare was as she prepared to share the story he knew all so well. Okay, so remember our last vacation? A long time ago. Right. A very long time ago. We all went out on a very long vacation. Camping? Yes. She put her legs up on the bed, hugging him and becoming wistful. We were all going to go out into the woods to spend 2 weeks in the woods. In Daddy's cabin, the boy was now shivering. She held him close and looked down at him. Yeah, but you know that part, right? We had the cabin all to ourselves, out in the middle of nowhere, just like here, very much so. But that was a special trip. Your father wanted us all to get out of the city and enjoy Mother Nature's gifts, as he said. He could not be stopped. Never wanted to take it too slow. Was she crying? He looked up at his mother. I'm sorry. No. Let's finish up the story. We went out into the woods in our car. All the food and gear was taken out. You helped me in the kitchen as I put things in shelves and let you check the stove and fridge. All the power was on, and nothing seemed out of place. And it was such a beautiful day. No mosquitoes. She laughed out loud at that memory. You always hated them. Always. They were going to drain my legs if I let them. Is that why you did not want to go out to the lake right away? His mother remembered everything. Maybe he wanted to forget some parts more than others. It was just, Dad wanted to go out there right away. He said that we were losing light, whatever that meant. He really did not check out anything in the cabin, except to see that his keys worked. It was like he could not wait. She did not interrupt her son as he told this part. You remembered everything. You are the one who should be telling the story, not this next part. That's right. She took a deep breath and began to tell him the part that he did not like. Okay, so I stayed inside, and you and your dad went down to the lake. We took a boat. He wiped his face. You took a boat. We were out on the lake. Heard a loon cry from somewhere, but no sound. No mosquitoes. No noises. And we caught a bass. Dad said it was spotted. I did not ask him what that meant. Wish I had. Guess it means the way it looked. I saw it. And this is where the boy was always confused. this part of the story did not make any sense to him. How did you know? We were walking up to the house, the cabin. I mean, it was late now, dark. You left a light on in the window. But I was so tired, and Dad let me carry the fish until everything went so black that I could not. She passed a hand over his head, kissing him on top of his thick hair and smiling. And that is what you always remember. Nothing else? He always felt frustrated at this part. No, I don't. I don't even know where Dad went. The police said that he must have just disappeared. But the car was there, and he left his wallet, his keys. Everything was, and he broke down again. It was always at the same moment. He felt so tired. I think that you should get some sleep. Yeah, right. The boy felt as if his head was sinking right to the floor. Maybe the mosquitoes are draining me now. Ha ha. Now, get some sleep. She got up and looked down at the boy. Did you hear that? The boy's eyes popped open. Hear what? Nothing. He smiled. It would be a good night's sleep. See? Nothing. Now sleep. Right. Night. She paused for a moment at the door to see if he really was asleep. It was when she heard his breathing and saw him flop onto his stomach that she knew he was out. The lamp had gone out by itself, out for the night. This made her happy. So happy. Her face cracked in the dim hallway, spilling the liquid and gore that she kept concealed from the world under the caked makeup and skin that had aged so badly. A long swallowing sound came out through her throat, and she smiled as she walked slowly to her room. The stink of her body was easy to cover with the heavy robe soaked in perfumes she made. And the cabin was perfect for them. No, not this one. There was a reason why they ended up in her woods. They were the only ones there, and she had them. He is not going to leave. Not like so many others who found a way to leave and abandon her, just like her first husband, just like the boy that she lost. Too painful to think about. Right. She adjusted the teeth, tongue and jaw that were sliding out of place. It was a good thing that she put that mirror in the hallway, right next to the boy's room. But there was one final thought she had to share before leaving him. The gurgling in her bile-filled throat allowed one last thing to escape into the darkness. Sweet dreams, my child. The guinea pigs. Dr. Travers ticked all the boxes on my consent form, and peering over his glasses, assured me an arm transplant was standard practice. I perform 10 a day, he said, handing me the paperwork. They're a piece of cake. Really? For sure, he said, indicating where to sign. It's just brain surgery that gives me a headache. Stella. The anesthetist rolled her eyes, sighed, and asked if I'd any allergies. None, I replied, scanning the small print. That's just perfect, she said, clearing her throat. Would you prefer gas and air, or the full works? What's the norm? I said, catching her eye. That depends. She smiled. Are you squeamish? Chauza. When I signed up for military service 5 years ago, I'd selected the BAGS health insurance option. Biologically Accelerated Growth Systems, or BAGS, for short, was a third-party company pioneering an experimental limb replacement scheme. The government initiated the idea, and the Ministry of Defense embraced the concept to counteract the ongoing threat of IEDs. In the event of a severe injury or amputation, they promised us rapid treatment and substitute limbs. All they required from volunteers were 2 pints of blood and sufficient genetic material to cultivate a trauma clone in their body farm. It made sense, and I had nothing to lose, hopefully. I have to admit that the lure of the extra pay motivated me when I signed the forms. Any potential injuries gained in active combat were far from my mind, and further complications seemed a remote possibility. It was during the 6 months of basic training I discovered no else had enrolled for the BAGS insurance policy. Perhaps everyone reckoned the scheme was just a gimmick. Maybe I'd misread the caveat on the consent form about transplanting living tissue. I mean, it never occurred to me I'd meet the limb donor face to face. Tutua, my last tour of duty, occurred in April 2015. Around the time jihadist fighters released a video of the ancient city of Nimrud erupting in a cloud of dust and smoke. They attacked its priceless sculptures and frescoes with sledgehammers and power tools, then detonated the 3,000-year-old Assyrian ruins. The wanton demolition came amidst a wave of attacks on Allied forces in Iraq. I lost my left forearm in Nasiriyah, about 360 clicks south-southeast of Baghdad, near the ruins of the ancient city of Ur. Sergeant Albury snagged his boot tip on a tripwire and didn't stand a chance. He was toast in an instant, poor sod. I was next in line, and the landmine's devastating blast threw me across the street. So much for the cradle of civilization. There was little below my left shoulder when I regained consciousness in the field hospital's ICU. The duty surgeon said I was under the knife for 10 hours and told me I was lucky to be alive. He expected a full recovery, having extracted a bucket of the shrapnel from my vital organs, although he expected roving fragments to surface over time. If you have any further issues, he said, picking his teeth, I'm sure your regiment's medics will sort you out. Yeah, right, I thought. But you know what? He wasn't wrong. A serious-minded BAGS employee in an expensive suit attended my bedside the following day and explained the benefits of my policy. He presented a convincing case for urgent action and applied for a consultation on my return to base. I waited 6 weeks for an appointment to discuss my suitability for a limb transplant. Dr. Travers was frank. Either he operated forthwith, or I faced an interminable desk job back at HQ, and no more active duty. "Are there any risks?" I asked. "The odds of rejection are slim," he said, frowning. "But better than your career prospects as a shorthand typist." "Point taken," I said, considering my disadvantage. Dr. Travers glossed over the matter of sourcing and matching a spare limb. "It's not all about physical compatibility," he said. "There's the psychological aspect to consider." I recall biting my lip when he explained a typical post-op response. "It'll be disconcerting and may feel as if it doesn't belong to you," he said. "However, just remember, an unfamiliar appendage is far better than the alternative." I'd no time to worry about the details because my allotted day in the operating theater happened within 48 hours. I didn't sleep the night before and entered the theater feeling lightheaded, having followed the nil-by-mouth instruction beforehand. Stella performed her last checks before a nurse handed me a surgical gown, and Dr. Travers scrubbed his hands while we waited for the trauma clone. The freezing cold hiatus on my back in the theater, wearing only a starched cotton gown, was the longest hour of my life. I was covered in goosebumps and shivering from a cold sweat when a masked nurse poked a gurney through the theater's swing doors. She appeared without a drum roll or fanfare, as if she was shoving a burdensome shopping trolley out of a supermarket. The nurse halted parallel to my surgical table, kicked down the brakes, and whipped off the thin sheet to reveal my doppelganger's naked body. It was wired up to a cluster of electrical body monitor pads and strapped down to the metal bed with sturdy leather belts. The left arm sported thick red pre-surgery symbols that looked like a gang member's colors and hanged loose and lifeless above the linoleum. He lay motionless beside me, staring past a bloated plasma bag that dangled aloft and fed blood to an intravenous cannula. Dr. Travers raised his arms and cracked his knuckles and nodded at Stella. She wasted no time and administered a heavy dose of propofol. I remember her asking me to count down from 10, but don't recall getting past 7. When I regained consciousness, my body double was still next to me, an exact copy, except now the left arm was missing, and there was a sutured wound below the shoulder. His eyelids were closed and motionless, except for an occasional REM flutter, and his chest rose and fell in even-paced undulations, as if operated by mechanized bellows. On closer inspection, the trauma clone was nothing like me. There were neither scars and stretch marks, nor any signs of life's long-term damage. The left arm I'd received was similar in size and shape to my original. I mean, I thanked God for my replacement, despite needing months of gym work to strengthen it. Yes, size-wise, it was a splendid match, and Dr. Travers had done a remarkable job. It's just that, well, I don't know. I guess I'll miss that barbed wire tattoo circling my forearm, and all my ginger freckles too. My ex-wife used to love those silly brown spots. "Nobody's perfect," she'd say. If only she knew she could see me now. "The adoption process takes time," Dr. Travers said during our meeting a week later. "You ought to be home soon, and you'll adjust in a few weeks." "Will it ever feel like mine?" I said, flexing my stiff new fingers. "Of course," he said, cleaning his spectacles. "Besides, I'm only a phone call away if you need reassurance." Dr. Travers couldn't guarantee the pairing process would work, and I had to be prepared for rejection. He outlined likely symptoms in case the donor's hand didn't marry up with my nervous system. It was a long month in the BAGS Institute while I acclimated to my new limb. I followed the physio's guidelines for recovery and adhered to her plan, exercising as much as possible. The Institute's layout was straightforward. The building supported 8 levels, and most floors contained glass-partitioned offices. As far as I knew, the first floor contained the surgical theater and recovery wards, and the windowless ground floor housed the gym, storage units, and a boiler room. My first floor ward was empty, and I was alone most days, apart from Nurse Winter's morning welfare visits and meal deliveries, and Dr. Travers' weekly progress checks. I seldom encountered any other members of staff on any of the 8 floors, and met nobody in the gym, pool, or sauna facilities. Apart from intermittent security patrols, there were only a couple of employees engaged in gardening and exterior maintenance work. It was on my last day that we had a power cut, and the building lost its heat and lighting. I was exiting the gym at the time, cast into darkness by the occurrence, and strayed down an unfamiliar corridor. It was about 10 minutes before the green overhead emergency lights kicked in, by which time I found myself in one of the storage units. Somehow, I'd bypassed the security system in the outage and found myself lost in a maze of boxes, sealed containers, and cargo bays. I admit being disorientated by the experience. However, a sudden thought occurred. Until that moment, I'd never considered my trauma clone's whereabouts. Where was he? And what condition was he in? Was there accommodation here? Dr. Travers had led me to believe the Institute looked after and supported my trauma clone. So, why had he forbidden me to talk to him or make contact? I was pondering these questions as I meandered down a gentle sloped vehicle access ramp into the basement. As soon as I entered the lower corridors, I heard a low, stuttering hum of clicks and splutters. I thought it was a chattering mechanical turbine spluttering to life. I was wrong. The noise had an organic quality and enveloped me in slow pulses, like surf dissolving between fractured seashells on a distant shore. I stumbled onwards in the pale amber glow until I could advance no further. The light was emanating from translucent ceiling panels within a glass-walled room. Below it stood motionless figures connected to an upper gantry by a complicated loom of feeding tubes and electrical sensor cables. Life support systems, I imagined. The figures all shared similar characteristics, but differed somewhat in musculature, as if they were cuttings taken from a parent and propagated at staggered intervals. They were all naked and standing in equally spaced rows and columns, like life-sized chess pieces, awaiting a call to arms. There were at least 20 of them, all staring ahead with uncomprehending, glazed eyes and indifferent expressions. The wretched creatures were like a herd of cattle grazing in a pasture, oblivious to time and tide, and at the mercy of unknown assailants. I advanced towards the glass wall, and the closest figure's head turned to face me. It was obvious from his missing limb and sutured shoulder that we'd met before. There was a spark of recognition in those dilated pupils, like a dim, flickering light from a dying star. He edged forward as far as his tethers would allow, and raised his right arm in painful increments. All the while, those black pools of artificial existence held their intense, unflinching gaze. His fingertips reached to their full extent, like an unfurling leaf, and stroked the surface of the glass between us. I placed my left hand on the transparent surface and spread my fingers. Without so much as a blink, he mimicked my gesture. Our raised palms mirrored each other, either side of the shatterproof glazing. My hand flinched, as if gripped by its rightful owner, or some vestigial impulse dictated its movement. I hesitated for more than a minute as it twitched and writhed of its own accord. I lowered my eyes, tearing myself from his pitiable stare. 15 millimeters separated us, and yet we were worlds apart, as if we were distant relatives meeting in some parallel universe. I imagined some warmth in his palm, and supposed his instinctive gesture was meant to keep me there. He turned away and returned to his designated position amongst all my other clones. They were all looking at me now. My back spasmed with an intense, muscular shiver, as if I'd felt an icy blast. It was impossible to remain there with all those pairs of eyes judging me. I rubbed my hands together for warmth as I walked away, and I realized my clone wasn't born. He was created. He hadn't emerged from nature. The Institute reared and propagated him from cells which they'd nurtured to a mature specimen. That notion should have consoled me, but it didn't. Dr. Travers was adamant. The trauma clone didn't have a life as such. No family, no memories, and no real concept of a world outside. That was how he told me to frame the situation. "You're lucky," he said. "Not everyone has a chance to replace all their vital organs." I felt sick, looking down at my left arm afterwards, and recalled that awful stump on my doppelganger. Now, I'd encountered him in person. It felt as if I'd been caught red-handed, receiving stolen goods, and by chance met the lawful owner. "Don't worry about it," Dr. Travers said, placating my concerns. I couldn't be at peace with the notion, but I accepted he was right. How else could I live with myself, knowing that the trauma clone's only function was to donate spare parts? Charso. There was a guard of honor as I departed that evening, and I wondered what would happen if my trauma clone escaped. Would he survive in the outside world, or just succumb to nature's mercy, like a domesticated pet that's lost its natural instincts? As I walked across the deserted compound to my vehicle, I couldn't imagine returning here unless the worst happened. I supposed I'd only meet my trauma clone again if I was unlucky during my next tour in the Middle East. But who knows? They hadn't patched me up to stare at a PC all day. I am the silence between heartbeats. I'm talking to you. Yes, you. Don't pretend you didn't notice. That creak that whispers you tried to dismiss as nothing. It wasn't. I've been watching, listening. You've felt it, haven't you? That cold shiver crawling down your spine when you thought you were alone, when you told yourself the darkness was empty. But it's not, and neither am I. You're not scared? Oh, you will be. Do you know what bones sound like when they break? It's not the quick snap you're thinking of. No, it's much worse than that. It starts with a groan, like a branch struggling under heavy snow. Then comes the splinter, slowly, jagged. Bones are splitting apart, and fibers are tearing like meat from the bone. Have you ever heard someone scream while their bones are being shattered inside them? No? That's the sound I made before I became this. It wasn't quick. No, the first bone that cracked, it was my hand. I remember feeling the skin tear and muscles snapping like twine stretched to the breaking point. Then, the grinding started. Oh, you don't know the horror of that sound. Teeth on glass, nerves ripped apart, a shriek of agony trapped in your skull. My ribs didn't just break. They crushed and caved in, one by one, under the weight of the water. Each crack echoed in my ears as the cold flooded my lungs. The air became water, and sweet oxygen traded for salty, thick brine, choking me. Can you imagine it? You will. Picture your fingers bending, folding backward with a sickening crack. One by one, each digit twists until bone bursts through the skin like shards of glass. The agony isn't clean. It crawls up your nerves, searing, pulsing, until your vision blurs, and all you see is blood. Red. So much red. And then, when the pain becomes too much to bear, it doesn't stop. It never stops. I can feel your heartbeat now picking up. Faster. You're sitting there, reading this, telling yourself it's just a story, but I'm closer than you think. Close enough to taste the fear dripping off you like sweat. I could drag my nails across your throat right now and feel your skin split under the pressure. Do you think you're safe? Look at your hands. Go on. Look, did you feel that? The prickling under your skin? That's me. I'm crawling inside you, testing you, tasting you. I want to see how much terror your body can handle before it snaps. And when it does, I'll be there to savor it. I'm with you now. Oh, I know you feel it. That crawling sensation under your skin, the burning pressure building in your chest. You're trying to ignore it and breathe steady. But your breath is shallow, right? Because I'm inside your fear. I live in the spaces between heartbeats, in the blood rushing through your veins. Soon, I'll live with you. When the lights flicker, the air grows thick with rot, and the cold wraps around your bones. You'll know I'm there. I'll make sure you do. Don't look around. Stay still. Listen. The creak. Like something crawling in the walls. It wasn't the house settling. I've been waiting for you to notice me. Waiting for you to let me in. You can't see me. Not yet. But you can feel me. That smell. Like something festering, rotting in the walls. It's stronger now, isn't it? That's because I'm closer than ever. And tonight, I want you to feel me fully. I want you to know what absolute terror is. What does fear taste like to you? Metallic? Like blood in your mouth? Thick and coppery, seeping from your gums? I know that sour, acrid taste is on your tongue right now. You keep swallowing, trying to push it down, but it clings to the back of your throat, doesn't it? You know something is wrong. Something is terrible. Breathe deeply. Go on. Do you feel your lungs expanding? Desperate for air? Picture them filling with water. Thick, cold, briny water crawls into your throat, clogging your airways and spilling down your chest until your lungs are swollen, heavy, and useless. You want to scream, but only bubbles rise, and they taste like salt and blood. You try to claw at your throat to free yourself from drowning, but your fingers break under the strain. Snap, crack. Your knuckles fold inward like brittle sticks. That was my death. And now, I want you to feel it. You're shaking now, aren't you? Your palms are slick with sweat, rubbing together to find warmth and friction. But there's none. There's only the cold. The deep, bone-deep cold, sinking in and gnawing at your flesh. That's me, wrapping around you, sliding under your skin. My hands, once warm, are now dead, frozen to the bone. If I touch you, I'll leave marks, black, festering bruises, and I already have. Do you feel it? The throbbing on your arm, like fingers pressing more profoundly and deeper until the skin splits. Don't look. It's already too late. Look in the mirror. Go on. See how your eyes have lost their light? How do they seem hollow, dark, and sunken? That's because I'm draining you, bit by bit. With every breath you take, and every second you spend reading this, I'm pulling you closer to me. Soon, when you look at your reflection, you won't be staring back. It will be me. Close your eyes. Hear that sound? The cracking, crawling, like insects gnawing through wood? That's what I feel inside you. Burrowing, eating through your nerves, tearing you apart from the inside, leaving nothing but rot and ruin. Do you think so? That burning in your chest, that pressure that's building, it's suffocating you, isn't it? That's what I want. Now imagine this. It's the middle of the night. You wake, but you can't move. Your limbs are frozen. You try to scream, but your voice is gone. You hear breathing, not yours. You can taste it on your lips, thick and sour. And then something touches your foot, soft. A finger, it slides up your leg, leaving a trail of icy numbness that climbs higher. You can't move or scream. All you can do is feel it creeping up your skin, curling around your throat. That's how it started for me. I was awake. I felt it crawl into my lungs, deeper and deeper, until my breath was stolen. I thrashed, my nails splintering as I clawed at the walls, ripping the flesh from my fingers, blood pooling under my nails. But the dark was merciless. It wrapped around me, pulling me under and swallowing me whole. Do you feel it now? That tightness in your throat? Swallow. Does it feel harder? Like something's gripping your windpipe, slowly squeezing until all you can do is choke on the darkness. That's me. I'm inside you now. I'm watching you, watching your eyes flicker to the shadows, hoping nothing's there. But I am. I'm right behind you, inches away, staring at the back of your neck, so close I could reach out and dig my nails into your flesh. Feel the skin give way under the pressure. Feel the blood pulse beneath my grip. I could show you more. The way my fingers shattered as I clawed, desperate to escape. How my eyes bulged, veins throbbing, as the last breath was torn from my lungs. My flesh rotted and peeled away, leaving nothing but the cold, blackened bones beneath. You're not scared yet? You will be. Close your eyes. I'm going to show you what it feels like to die slowly, just like I did.